Okay, we are going to jump through, I guess, do most of these, but let's, these are from the Solving Square Root Functions Algebraically worksheet. I'm going to skip number 1. It's just like number 2, but number 2 is maybe a little more confusing because we don't like fractions. But we have a square root that's by itself on one side of an equal sign, so we square both sides. Square and the square root cancel each other out, and 10 squared is 100. So then we just have to multiply by 2 on both sides, and you get that n equals 200. You could check real quick, make sure that that's an actual solution. Plug it back up in there for n. So the square root of 200 over 2, does that equal 1 or equal 10? So what that means is the square root of 110? Sure is, which means n does equal 200. So same process for number 1. Square both sides. X is going to equal 71 there. All right, number 3, we have 2 square roots that are on different sides of the equation, and so we know that if we square, at least one of them will go away, and actually both of them. Square and a square root, they're both those are inverses, so they cancel out. We have 22 minus 2m equals 2m minus 18. So now let's get all the m's on one side and all the constants on the other side. 22 plus 18 is 40. We'll add 2m to both sides. And we get 4m equals 40, which means that m equals 10. Let's check it, make sure that it works. If we plug it in here, we would have the square root of 22 minus 2 times 10. That would be the square root of 2. Is that equal to 2 times 10 is 20 minus 18 is 2. So is the square root of 2 equal to the square root of 2? Sure is. So that is your solution. Number 4. Again, square root's only on one side. There's nothing there with it. So let's go ahead and square both sides. The 2 and the square root. The square and the square root, those are inverses, so they cancel out. You get x squared equals 7 minus 6x. Oh boy, we have an x squared. We have a quadratic. So let's get everything on one side of the equal sign and set it equal to 0. Okay, opposite side, opposite sign. That negative 6, when we move it across the equal sign, it's going to be a plus 6. Then we'll factor it if we can, and since we can, let's factor. Okay, so 7 times negative 1 is negative 7, and 7 minus 1 is 6. So our two answers that we're looking at here are x equals negative 7 and x equals 1. So all we have to do is we go back up to our original equation. We have negative 7 equals the square root of 7 minus 6 times negative 7. So negative 7 equals the square root of 7 plus 42 is 49. So we get negative 7 equals 7. No, it doesn't. The square root of 49 is 7. 7 doesn't equal negative 7. So x can't equal negative 7. That's an extraneous solution. Now let's try 1. Does 1 equal the square root of 7 minus 6 times 1? So that's saying, does 1 equal the square root of 7 minus 6 is 1? Does 1 equal the square root of 1? Sure does. So x minus 1 is our solution. Let's do number 5 real quick and easy. There's no squareds there, no x squareds. So let's do number 6. Got a square root by itself. We square both sides. The square and the square root cancel each other out. We're left with 16 plus 6x equals n squared. All right, it doesn't matter which way we move this, but I like my n squareds to be positive. So I'm going to subtract 6n and subtract 16 from both sides. And that'll leave me with 0 equals n squared minus 6n minus 16. All right, are there factors of negative 16 that add up to negative 6? Sure are. Negative 8 and 2. So we have that 0 equals n minus 8 times n plus 2, where n equals 8 and n equals negative 2. The last step is to check both of those for extraneous solutions. So let's go back up here with n equals 8. The square root of 16 plus 6 times 8 is equal to 8. Well, 6 times 8 is 48. 48 plus 16 is 64. So is the square root of 64 8? It is. So n does equal 8. Now let's try negative 2. 16 plus 6 times negative 2 equals negative 2. So we're saying the square root of 4, is that equal to negative 2? No, it's not. Square root of 4 is 2. So 2 does not equal negative 2, and so that one's an extraneous solution, extraneous root. Okay. Number 7, you square both sides, and the square roots are canceled out by the squares. So that one's real quick and easy. X equals 10. Number 8 is one of the first ones like this, where you have a square root, but there's also something over on that side of the equal sign with the square root. So your best course of action is to get that to the other side. Why did the P cross the equal sign? Because it was late on a Friday. What did I say? So once we move it over there, we have P minus 6 on one side and a square root on the other side. So we're going to square both sides. The square and the square root cancel out. You get 4P minus 24 equals what? Well, remember we could write this as P minus 6 times P minus 6. So that's P times P is P squared. P times negative 6 is a negative 6P. Then a negative 6 times P, another negative 6P. And negative 6 times negative 6 is plus 36, positive 36. Alright, let's combine some like terms. Alright, we have a quadratic term here. So we're going to have to either factor or use the quadratic formula or graph to solve this. So let's get everything on the same side as that P squared. To do that, we'll subtract 4P from both sides. Negative 12P minus another 4P, negative 16P. And then 36 plus 24 is 60. Last step, factor it if we can. So I like factoring. Factoring is pretty quick and easy. Are there factors of 60 that add up to negative 16? I'm glad you asked. That would be 10 and 6. But since it's a negative 16, they're both going to be negative, because negative 10 times negative 6 is 60. Negative 10 minus 6 gets us the negative 16 here. So that's what we put in our parentheses. We get P equals 10, P equals 6. Back up here at the top, I'm going to steal some space over here. Let's check our answers. You can do this probably in your head. I'll write it out. So 4P, that's 4 times 10, minus 24, minus 10 equals negative 6. So that would be the square root of 40 minus 24, that's 16, minus 10 equals negative 6. Square root of 16 is 4, minus 10 equals negative 6. It sure does, and so P equals 10 is one of our answers. Let's see if it's our only answer. Let's check 6. The square root of 4 times 6 is 24. 24 minus 24. Okay, cool, that's 0. So minus P, P is 6, equals negative 6. So does negative 6 equal negative 6? It sure does. And so P also equals 6. P equals 6, or P equals 10. Alright, we have every problem should be covered in a video. If you have a question, shoot me an email sometime this weekend. Work hard. See you on Monday.